So that's the introductions, and coming up. So the CCA land acknowledgement, we begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are on the unceded and unconquered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We are grateful for the opportunity, and we thank all the generation of Indigenous people who have taken care of and continue to take care of this land. And we also do a charter of respect. So the Centertown Community Association is committed to provide a professional, friendly, safe, and welcoming environment for all participants in its meetings and events, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, disability, skin color, ethnicity, religion, national origin, economic situation, age, and language. We expect all participants and speakers at CCA meetings and events to ensure a safe and positive experience for everyone, both in conversation and in the chat room, by treating each other with dignity and respect. This requirement for respect is at all time applied to all communication and forms, including phones and emails. So I'm just going to go a little bit. Okay, so we have a lot of active CCA groups. Trees and green space, gardening groups, planning committee, heritage. And the three I'm most interested in is housing affordability, anti-racism working group, and climate change working group. There's a farmers market and transportation committee. We have a slightly inactive seniors, and we have a YWCA and YMCA continuity group that has recently formed because they are exploring the sale of the buildings there. So, and there's 198 to 194 affordable units there. So we have we have our community workshop recorded, and you can look it up in YouTube. And we're collaborating with other community associations and groups, and I'm participating in the task force to revitalize Ottawa downtown, and we're also a part of the Ottawa Community Benefits Network, so Centertown Community Association, and I'm personally on the steering committee. So and the anti-racist working group, it has been around for a couple of years. We're finding there's a lot of overlap between anti-racism and housing affordability, because there's a lot of the Indigenous, Black single mothers and other groups have, which some of are from racialized community, are often in more housing need. So we're kind of doing some things together. So this, with the Dream project, have priority groups for Indigenous veterans and single mothers. So it's kind of a low-ball joint project. And this is just a very this is just our social media, and I'm sure most people are familiar with Zoom. The session is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, you can turn your camera off. And please mute yourself unless you identify to speak. And to pre-ask question in the chat, please start with QQQ, so it's easier for us to spot it. And if you feel comfortable putting your full name, please do. If not, you know, you can change it to just your first name or whatever. And I am not 100% sure, but I saw Katie Paris signing on. So that's from NCC and some other people. So hopefully, I think it's looking to be a really exciting meeting. And I will start with the introduction of our panelists. First is basically looking at the housing continuum. This project will have some social housing, some affordable rental housing, and some market rental housing. And And thanks, Justin, for providing the new updated image. So as I said, these are the stats of what I know of the project. And I'll pass it over to Suzanne. And she would talk about her the multi-faith housing and their role in the Dream LeBreton Flats. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Justin and I are going to present together on the project. But we have a PowerPoint, and I have that geared up. Justin, I'm not sure if you have it geared up, the one that you sent me earlier.
I do now. Okay. Now we're not able to share.
Yeah, no. I'll make you guys co-host. Sorry, I meant to do that, but I was busy doing other stuff. So let me see. Let me find you guys. My apologies. I meant to set this up before we started, but
okay, Mary, I put it as a multiple participants can share simultaneously. So I think Justin can go ahead and try and share.
Great. I think I can do that now. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh, I had to finish my, I have to end mine. Sorry, give me a second. Stop share. There.
Perfect. Okay, everyone can see now?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic.
Great.
So maybe I'll just start with a quick introduction about we'll start with a quick introduction about myself and Dream and Suzanne and MHI, and then we can get right into some of the project details. So thanks everyone for joining. We're really excited to be presenting this project to you. We really think this is a precedent-setting model in the National Capital Region to provide some meaningful and deep affordable housing in the context of a sustainable project as well. So looking forward to having a discussion on this project. But maybe before we start, I'll just mention a little bit about Dream for those who may not be familiar with our business operations. So Dream is a large-scale asset manager and developer of real estate across Canada, the US and Europe. Our headquarters is in Toronto, where we call home, but over the last 6 years, we also have a local footprint in Ottawa as well. We are the lead developer on the ZB project, just about a kilometer north of the subject site that we're talking about today. And part of our mandate and part of our DNA is really about developing projects that take into account meaningful impacts around or really sort of it's bringing forward sort of social benefits and social outcomes for the people that choose to live and work in our communities. So part of our platform is includes having a portfolio that is dedicated to achieving net zero on a number of communities. We have a target of the majority of our assets becoming net zero by 2035. So that includes a full modernization of a number of our existing assets, and then some of the new projects that we're working on, finding plans to get to net zero or zero carbon in that time as well. Suzanne, I'll turn it over to you.
So the Multifaith Housing Initiative is, for those of you who don't know us, we are an affordable housing provider and a housing charity at that as well. We have developed 138 units in the last 5 to 7 years, with our most recent 2 projects, which is the Veterans House project and the Haven project. And our focus is on those families who are most at need in our core mission. So I noticed that your priorities is kind of housing, anti-racism, climate change. And in all of our projects, we hit on that. So it's kind of where everything comes together. So we have our housing is for those who are most at need, as I mentioned, but we also, because we're made up of different faith and cultural backgrounds, who run our board of directors, who come and volunteer in our committees, we really have that kind of that inclusive representation in our whole governance structure and how we're run. And then also we've really focused on, we don't feel like we can do our work while kicking the environment in the shins. And so that also has to be a real part of everything we do. So the Haven, which was 98 units, is LEED Gold certified. We were actually an inch away from being able to certify LEED Platinum. But to get to LEED Platinum, all that we needed was a bunch of different tests, which cost a lot of money, but actually gave no value back to the building and the running the building or the environmental standard of the building. And we just couldn't warrant spending that kind of money on nothing but a name on a certificate. But we did reach the LEED Gold and we certified there. Veterans House is the first of its kind, designed for homeless veterans who are living rough on the streets. And 100% of our tenants who moved into that building were living rough on the streets, in camp communities, or in the shelter system. And they all are confirmed veterans. It's a supportive housing community. This project has been designed as a pilot, and we have incorporated a parallel sister charity whose goal is to take this project across the country to kind of tackle that issue. And then we have, at the Dream project, we have priority populations, the named priority populations. Multifaith Housing Initiative has 133 units that will be ours for deep core need affordability. And of that, 30 units are set aside specifically for Indigenous Canadians on to come into that whole place. Veterans also a priority. Adults with cognitive disabilities, mothers with children, and newcomers to Canada. These are the same priorities we have at the Haven and in our other projects. So it's a big part of who we are and what makes us kind of special, a little apart. We are the only housing charity in Ottawa that is not just supportive housing, that we actually have the family housing and kind of hit all these other pieces. And the fact that we are made up of over 80 faith groups of different Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Baha'i, Hindu, Unitarian. We really kind of cover everybody and that inclusivity. So I'll talk a little bit about this and I'll hand it back to Justin. The climate resilience stuff, that's his, like he can talk forever on this. And I just say, does it tick all the boxes? And I know the keywords, but that's about it. I don't understand how it really works. Affordability. There's 608 residential units. Of this, over 250 units are affordable, 133 by MHI. Deep core need, Dream will be having another 118 units that are at 79% of MMR, median market rent, with a blended affordability of 69% of median market rent. In our like we say units at 79%, we'll have some units that go to a much deeper core need than that we actually design our project to kind of have a little bit more mixed, that we have units that reach the level of shelter allowance for people on Ontario Works and Ontario Disability, which is significantly less than that. And then we may throw in some rents that sit at a little higher of like 80% of average market rent, so that we can offset those ones who have much deeper core need. The 55-year affordability tenure, that is Dreams. Multifaith Housing Initiative is in perpetuity. We are, as long as we exist, that is our mission. Our mission is to meet the needs of the most vulnerable and the most in need in our city. And also a big focus on family units. Another thing that I think is really important to talk about as we talk about inclusivity, I'll let Justin talk more about the development side of the inclusivity, but when it comes to the operational side, and I may be talking ahead because that's what I do, we'll get to a slide and I'm going to say I told you all about this. But one of the important things to note is that Multifaith Housing Initiative's brand is that we build communities. Our focus is the bricks and mortar is the means to the end, but the end is the community that we build. And so this focus that we will have together with Dream, Dream has committed to funding at $150,000. They've committed $150,000 a year over 20 years to the community development side of it, that they will work with us to provide community development and community programming for all the tenants together, which means the market tenants will be doing the same yoga classes and their kids will go into the same homework classes and clubs, and all of that will be happening in one very inclusive community. There's not going to be poor doors and rich doors. We're really going to be living together. So Justin, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit about the climate piece.
Sure. So yeah, so as Suzanne mentioned, I think when we look at this project and how it came to be, I think our focus was on, you know, 3 impact verticals being affordable housing, sustainability, and inclusive communities. We talked Suzanne mentioned a lot of the details around the affordability. Obviously, part of our design, we really purposely designed and our suite mix and suite layouts that were really conducive to a number of the priority populations that we were targeting. So you will see, as we note here, quite a high propensity of, we'll say, family-oriented units, so larger 2 and 3 bedrooms for some of the women and children and larger families that we're looking to accommodate here. And then on the sustainability piece, you know, we are really trying to push, you know, new boundaries for environmental stewardship in this project. So really trying to take a holistic approach to sustainability across multiple scales. So in this case, we are pursuing LEED Gold, CAGBC Zero Carbon Standards, as well as a One Planet Living accreditation. So 3 different sustainability frameworks that we're operating under. And so some pretty grand aspirations to meet all those, and I think we have the right team in place and the right experience by virtue of some of the work we've done at ZB to hit zero carbon through our district energy system. And there's a couple more slides where we get into a little bit of detail, but we're very proud of our accomplishments here and some of the innovations that we're working on right now as we work towards a anticipated construction start later this year. And on the inclusivity side, part of our submission and the initial procurement process involved putting together an Algonquin benefits plan and a workforce benefits plan that and we put forward some commitments to achieving a number of things from employment, training, and apprenticeship opportunities for equity-seeking groups, Algonquin and other Indigenous groups. And so we have some very specific targets around the number of employment hours for these groups, and also the number of contract or the value of contracts that we're awarding to these groups as well. So something that we've been consulting with a number of folks. We have formed an Algonquin advisory committee as well to report back on some of our progress on a quarterly basis in that regard, but also to collaborate with them on how we can achieve some of those targets as well. So maybe just, I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with the site, but maybe just a quick overview to show you the location in proximity to a number of other key institutional and other surroundings. So the site is located right at the corner of Albert and Booth Street, immediately adjacent to the Pimisi station. So very much transit-oriented development. It is just west of the new Etisoke Central Library under construction today. And we really see this as setting the tone and setting the stage and a bit of a gateway for what's to come over the next several years as the balance of the LeBreton Flats Master Concept Plan starts to come alive with future development further to on the other side of Booth Street. And certainly for Dream, it's strategic for us in that we are already very much actively working on our ZB project just a little bit further north, as I had mentioned before. So Suzanne and I touched a little bit on this before, but certainly I think you know, both organizations are very much aligned in their mandate for deep, meaningful, affordable housing and some of the impact verticals that we had touched base on before. Dream Community Foundation, which we formed fairly recently, is a charitable organization, charitable arm from Dream, and we're really focused on making contributions continued contributions post-development into operations to continue supporting on-site services and programs for our residents and our tenants. And so Dream Community Foundation is very much focused on doing that here at the LeBreton Flats Library parcel as well. We've got a 20-year commitment as a minimum, and we suspect, you know, we certainly have aspirations to hold this asset long term, so we expect that commitment to continue to extend beyond that as well. So this gives you a bit of a snapshot of you know, the overall design proposal for this project. We really envisioned this project as you know, sort of a terraced podium that sort of opened up to these larger towers. Part of the design inspiration for that was to open up some pretty meaningful outdoor spaces for community living and community interactions. So you'll see on all of these terrace podiums a lot of different amenity spaces for things like community gardens. We also have a very large daycare on the third floor. We're working with a daycare operator right now on the space. And we think that's going to be a fantastic amenity for the residents living in the building. And then just to give you a bit of color on the inspiration behind the towers, we worked with an artist by the name of Margaret Priest to come up with a bit of a color palette for these towers. You'll obviously notice some pretty prominent red tones, a red gradient tone in these towers. Part of the inspiration here was you know, relating to the Gatineau Hills and the Falls. You get those beautiful you know, deep red and orangey colors, and then as you move up the building, you see those tones sort of light up a bit to have a bit of more of a relationship to the sky above. Another very significant component of the proposal is a very meaningful open public realm. We have a number of different pieces of the landscape that are intended to be interactive and seating opportunities and interaction opportunities for residents and the public alike. So we've already, you know, part of our project milestones here as well, some of which, you know, sort of subject to financing and finalizing a couple approvals, but we've made some excellent progress since January of 2022. We actually closed on the land just over a year ago and have achieved our rezoning. We're finalizing our site plan approval with the city right now, as well as some final details for a final FLUTA approval, federal land use and design approval with the National Capital Commission as well. So paving the way to be ready for a construction start. We're really going to be ready for a construction start, you know, pretty much imminently, but working through also just the construction financing component right now, and finalizing sort of our sources of funds as we get ready for construction. So pending that, we could be welcoming our first residents as early as the end of 2025. We're looking at a phased occupancy where we're sort of prioritizing some of the lower floors and some of the more meaningful affordable units on both towers. Ultimately, assuming construction start in the next few months, we'd be looking at a full project completion later in 2026. We did speak in detail about sort of the affordable housing units. One thing I'll say in terms of our approach and design is the suite finishes are all identical between market and affordable. We have some components where we are effectively checkerboard. It's a checkerboard approach in that some of our affordable units are completely interspersed in the western tower, and then in the eastern tower, we've obviously clustered that together for MHI, for the units that they will own and operate. And I think there's some synergies there as well in terms of being able to provide all the on-site supports and services that their tenants will require as well. So on the sustainability front, again, these are very ambitious but achievable goals for us. What we are looking at as it relates to sort of the buildings alone is developing buildings that are 45% more energy efficient than a standard new residential building, this code compliant residential building. And so the path to getting to zero carbon really relies on sort of a more meaningful investment in things like your building envelope. We're also incorporating rooftop solar, as well as some solar on the building envelope itself, on the penthouse. But really the meaningful opportunity for us to, or path to get to net zero also zero carbon relies on tapping into other renewable energy sources. So in this case, and I've got some more slides and the diagrams for better visual, but this case we are actually tapping into the Albert sewer trunk just immediately adjacent to our site as a means of extracting, as a means of tapping into using that for heating and cooling and all the domestic hot water needs that we require for this project. But before I dive into that, one other piece that I think sets this project apart from other projects that are pursuing certain sustainability accreditations is our One Planet Living framework. So One Planet Living is a bit different from some of the other green building standards that you might be accustomed to seeing, such as LEED. One Planet really looks at sustainability on a community scale, and it really involves 10 different principles of sustainability, everything from developing a plan for zero waste, for zero carbon, and even measuring the health and happiness of your residents. So we do this already on our ZB project, and we have set out a long list of targets and developed a One Planet action plan, and we report on that annually to Bioregional. Bioregional is sort of the regulator who based in the UK that reviews and oversees our progress and provides us that accreditation. So the component that I was mentioning before, involved tapping into the Albert sewer trunk for heating, cooling, and domestic hot water needs for the library parcel. It's really what we really call a sewer heat recovery system. So the sewer heat recovery system, we've seen examples of that working well in other jurisdictions. We know there's 1 or 2 examples in Vancouver. The Western Hospital in Toronto is now developing one, but this will be the first of its kind in the National Capital Region. And we are working with Thea and Envari. Envari is a subsidiary of Hydro Ottawa. And these are partners we've worked with before on developing our district energy system at Zibi. But we are working with them again, effectively leveraging each partner's experience and expertise in similar energy supplying arrangements to develop this sewer heat recovery system. And so I'm not an engineer by any means, so I try to take a simplistic way of explaining the system, but effectively you'll see on the image on the right, this involves really developing a wet well, which is really a bathtub for discharging, tapping that into the collector sewer, and sort of extracting that water. The water, what's interesting about it is in the summer months, the temperature of the water is cooler. And then in the winter months, the temperature of the water is warmer. So we're sort of leveraging that for heating and cooling efficiencies. So there's an energy transfer station that really treats that heated or chilled water. And ultimately, it's brought into the development's own energy transfer station that treats that and brings that heated or chilled water through the development as well. Another interesting innovation for this project as well is just the envelope system that we're using for the buildings. So we're using a really high performing panelized wall system that really to get us, to improve our energy efficiency on this building by quite a large margin. So there's a bit of a it's also a bit of a modular approach for construction as well, and it really involves a number of the elements required for the construction of the envelope. Lastly, I think there's a number of other sustainability elements to this project. So this is just a good depiction of some of the things that we're proposing. Again, rooftop solar is a big chunk of that. We expect about 5% of our total energy demand generated from the rooftop solar as well. And then I think lastly, just this gives you a bit of a snapshot in terms of where we are today. So we're sort of right in this period where we're finalizing a number of our municipal and federal approvals in anticipation of a construction start. Like I mentioned before, assuming construction proceeds in the near future, we could be welcoming our first tenants as early as end of 2025, and then late 2026 is when we expect to complete construction. I've also just for reference providing a few of our latest in progress design drawings. So as you'll see here, a pretty meaningful public realm, including some areas for seating, children's play, and we have a number of different areas for placeholders for certain interpretive elements. So we are already working with an Algonquin curator on developing a design narrative for a few key pieces in the landscape, and we'll be going for calls for artists, for Algonquin artists in particular, to work with on bringing some of those interpretive elements to light as well. And then this is just a quick glance at what the ground floor of the buildings look like, we have a fairly substantial amount of retail fronting some of the Albert and Booth frontages. So we're anticipating a mix of generally some food and beverage and convenience-oriented uses. The intent here is to have more, small bay units, 12 to 1,500 square feet generally, to provide a bit of a variety of uses for personal services and convenience and food as well. We do also have a number of communal amenities on the site, some of which you'll see on the ground floor. We have a community hub here that will also be open to the public for certain events as well. And we have a bike workshop for the residents of the building. A big part of the development mandate for us is we are going to be providing bicycle parking at a rate of 1 stall per unit. We really want to promote other active means of transportation, especially in light of our proximity to the LRT station, and by virtue of some of our sustainability goals we're trying to achieve as well. And then this gives you a sense of how the terrace podiums shape up for some of the outdoor amenities as well. Very well landscaped, a number of community gardens. We have some space for outdoor play for our childcare center as well. And ultimately, by virtue of some of our building standards, we can't necessarily have a number of balconies in the tower. There's a number of reasons for that. But so ultimately, our idea was to really look at providing more communal space, and so we thought that a terraced approach here allowed for some good amenity space for all the residents. Suzanne, sorry, I probably dragged on a little too long, but maybe I'll turn it over to you before we conclude our presentation for any other pieces I may have missed.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, that was really good. That was kind of going through all the technical details that I think everyone here would be really interested in. My focus is always on the housing crisis. Most of you will be aware that the city of Ottawa did declare that the city was in a state of housing, a state of crisis when it came to housing in January 2020. There are over 12,000 households, not people, households, on the wait list in Ottawa waiting for affordable housing. So there is a very great need for a project like this to come about. And one of the biggest things that we running up against in really fixing this problem right now, as everyone I'm sure is aware, watching issues around budget debates, and all of that piece is funding issues. No one seems to have any money. The province is kind of really not at the table when it comes to affordable housing, and they're traditionally the ones who hold the biggest envelope when it comes to affordable housing for the city, and they are not really funding Ottawa at this point in time. And then you've got issues around increasing interest rates. Every time those interest rates increase, then the cost of the debt that we carry is increased, and the cost of the requirement of income to cover off that debt increases, or our capital funding increases in order to offset the debt. So these are kind of like some of the things that we're struggling with and trying to deal with, but at the same time recognizing one of the really important pieces about this is the replicatability. You hear a lot of different politicians and bureaucrats talk about the real need to bring in market developers to work with nonprofit and charitable housing developers to really meet the need that is so much greater than anything we can do on our own. And this project does exactly that. And the partnership between Multifaith Housing Initiative and Dream is something that is very innovative and is the first of its kind in the country. And the project is being designed in a way that could be really well replicated as we move forward, both in the city and across the country, and helping address this issue around the affordability and housing crisis. So those were the things that I wanted to bring up. And I think at this point in time, we're ready to open it to questions or however you want to structure that, Melanie.
Thank you. Could I have a question?
Sorry, who was that? We have some question in the chat, so we will start with those first.
Yes.
So, but who, can you raise your hand? So I know I'll come to you after I do the one that's already in the chat. Who was it that spoke up? Okay, I'll start with the question that's already in the chat. There was a question about accessibility and for people who are disabled, and Suzanne has answered that 30% of the unit are fully accessible. So all the units will have the wider doors and corridors, so that they're at least the other 70% are at least visitable. That's a question.
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So yeah, all common area is designed to be barrier free. So I think in particular, what you look at there is making sure there is enough, the spatial requirements can accommodate, turning of wheelchairs. So we've designed the buildings to accommodate that in common areas and the public realm as well. And then as Suzanne mentioned, we've got 31% of the units that are accessible. So those units also would have certain spatial requirements around turning radii for wheelchairs as well. And then we also have a few units that meet universal design and adaptable standards. So that's even going another layer deeper from an accessibility perspective, where you have things like adjustable countertops, lower set appliances.
That's great, because we have developers coming to us saying they're building to the minimum the provincial government required, which is only 15%, and it's not fully accessible. So kudos to the project for exceeding as we work towards a hopefully full universal standard somewhere down the road.
If I could just quickly put in a pitch on that as well. When we look at, again, advocating to our government, to our politicians, to everyone around funding for affordable housing, that piece needs to be taken into consideration, because it's substantially more expensive to develop accessible units and to develop to universal standards. And those appliances that you heard Justin talk about, those lowercase appliances, again, very, very expensive. So when we're making these demands, we need to be saying to the government that they need to be funding to that level as well, all three levels of government. So just keeping on always we got to get it. It's great to have these ideas, but we have to build it, and building it costs money, and we need to be able to be willing to put our money where our mouths are.
Nope, that's great, because we have an aging population, and in 2035, 25% of the population are going to be over 65, and whereas 15% accessibility is I think for Ontario is a lagging standard. So this is great. Yes, I think we need to, if we talk to any of the elected official, we should bring up that point, that they need to fund the higher accessibility units and costs. So sorry, let me look at the questions. There's a question from Elena McGregor of Centertown Buds. How will you ensure that there is easy access through the library parcel from Adisoke to the Primsey station. And
Yeah,
also, well, the solar energy also provide emergency electricity in the event of a hydro outage.
yeah. So on the first question, I can speak to that. Our plan provides for connections, or multi-use pathways, and those multi-use pathways along our site, which the intent would be for those connections to extend through the Adisoke site as well. There are certain standards of construction associated with those pathways, which take into account accessibility requirements as well.
Okay, sorry. I'm just curious. Are there any connections? Because it's the same topic. Are there any connections below ground, because we are a winter city 6 months of the year, between your buildings and potentially going to the other parts of the library as well as the station? Any plans
No.
for that?
For underground, no, I would say that is a little bit difficult because there are a number of pieces of important infrastructure that sort of bisect our site and really make it difficult to sort of encroach or build through. So we're in fact, our development plan sort of for the buildings actually sits outside of those easements. So there isn't any below grade connections planned.
Not even between your two buildings?
Oh, sorry, between the two buildings there is. It's one large shared underground parkade. And so there's access through below grade is available between those two buildings. But in terms of below grade access to Pimisi Station or to Adisoke, that is not contemplated.
Okay. So another question from Warren Waters. What are the mechanisms for accountability for the targets?
Yeah, a really good question. So part of our transaction with the National Capital Commission included posting securities in order as security to meet some of these commitments around the Algonquin Benefits Plan, the workforce strategy, and some of our sustainability targets as well.
So the NCC is the one that's holding the project accountable for the target that was stated in the request for proposal, I guess.
Yeah, and we will have with CMHC, by virtue of some of our funding sources, there would be commitments in our credit agreements associated with meeting those targets as well. So it would be, or some of the funding is conditional on that as well. So it's very much tied to sources of funding and the transaction itself.
Okay. Another question is for Lynn Markel to Multifaith Housing. Have you got the funding for your units? How do you own your units, the 133 units, to Suzanne?
Yeah, so we're very close. We're in our final negotiations right now. CMHC, the city has been very supportive of the project. Our big issue right now is the missing province, who have not come to the table and have not been very engaged with affordable housing, particularly in Ottawa during their tenure. So that's caused us a bit of a shortfall, and we are right now trying to problem solve for it, or try to bring the province to the table, or alternatively try to get the feds to cough up some more money to make up for the missing province. So we're close. We're very close. Not quite there yet, but we're very close. How we're going to own it is through a stratified forward sale. So the building is not being registered as condos. It is the whole buildings are all rental, but Multifaith Housing Initiative, I believe it's like floor 3 to 15 or something like that. We will own a section of the building. And so it's like literally like as if you look at the building like 2 condos. This floor that's from here to here, this big piece of the building that's ours, and then the rest will be Dreams. And so we will own outright our own project, our own within the project, and we will be doing our own cash rolling of the development of our portion of the project while we're in construction.
So Suzanne, do you mind if I ask how much is hoped for from the province that they're not coming to the table for?
Right now, we're missing about a little over 10% of the money we need. So the total cost of the project, we're missing about 10%. And so that is about $7 to $8 million. And what happened there was the interest rates went up. The amount that we could carry with debt based on our very low rents went down. So the amount of debt we could hold went down, and then that created the gap. And every time interest rates go up, that gap goes up, and every time interest rates go down, the gap goes down. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and just trying to deal with that.
Mary, can I do a follow-up, please?
Sure. Then, since we're still on the topic, go ahead.
Okay, and so I was asking about how you were going to own your housing. To what extent do you own some of the common space? How does that work? And does Dream and Multifaith Housing together manage that? And do you have some kind of committee or some kind of mechanism for doing that? So you have input into that as well as just certain floors within the building.
Yeah, so sorry, they're doing the garbage out my window now, so.
Okay, all right.
But yes, so we will own, there is some amenity space that we will own outright. And then also there is stuff that you know, amenity space that will be on our own floors that we're going to own. And then as for the rest of the building, we're going to have kind of a shared space agreement together with Dream, where we own and program, like co-own, co-program a lot of that space within our building.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay.
I'm involved in PAL, and PAL is doing a lease of a building from Ottawa Community Housing. So I'm interested in these kind of joint housing ventures. There seem to be a new way of doing things, and certainly this idea that a private sector company is doing a lot of work, and then a nonprofit is also partnering with that. That's also very interesting pilots for a way to be able to create affordable housing.
Yes, I do believe I presented to your group recently.
Okay, yeah.
We have Sheila Pepper, who has raised her hand.
Thank you very much. I just have to go to another meeting shortly on health, but I'm so pleased. I was a city planner in the 70s and 80s for the city of Ottawa, and recreation planning primarily, but I'm so pleased because with my degrees at Carleton University and so on, we looked at this over many decades, as you can imagine, and as you know in your history, and replanned, and several of our exercises in Carleton was to replan the whole site. And finally, we are getting what we want with all of your wonderful amenities and these 2 buildings that will house the people that we wanted to get in there 3-4 decades ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for the comment. Sorry, there was a previous question from Elena McGregor that was not answered. She's, let me find it. She was asking about, would the solar panel or would it be, I guess the other option is generator, provide emergency backup for some essential things in the building if there's a hydro outage.
Yeah. Sorry, I probably neglected to answer that one, but yes, there's built-in operational contingency. We have a backup generator in the event of an outage, but certainly from an electricity perspective, we expect the solar to contribute to a good portion of the energy demand as well.
Great. A follow-up comment from Warren Waters on accountability. He's asking if there's any public accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple different things. So one is we have an Algonquin Advisory Committee where we meet quarterly and we talk about our progress. We report on our progress. There is an annual report that we will do as well for the NCC and CMHC as it relates to our progress with some of these targets. And then we also voluntarily, Dream Impact has a Dream Impact measurement framework where we put together not just LeBreton, but we'll certainly report on LeBreton as well, but some of our impact measures and how we're benchmarking ourselves and what some of our successes and room for improvement is. We publish that, and that is on our on the Dream website and published annually.
And as far as Multifaith is concerned, that is built into just who we are because we are a charity. So, you know, all of our financial statements are public. It's all available. Information on us is available on CRA. We're accountable to all of our membership, donors, supporters, volunteers. We have about 60 core volunteers who volunteer with us on a month-to-month basis. And then also we have, we'll have our own agreements on our funding agreements that will have all the commitments that we have voluntarily put forward will end up being baked into all of those agreements.
Okay. Let me look. There was another question. So there, what are the planned ratio for car parking per unit and the bicycle parking per unit, which you Justin stated was 1-to-1. Will there be visitor parking and will there be EV charging stations?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So car parking ratios were really pretty low on the car parking ratios, obviously by virtue of proximity to the LRT station. But in total, we were accommodating 2 levels of underground parking. It's a little over 200 stalls for 608 units. So it's about around 0.35 stalls per unit is sort of the parking ratio that we have. So we're trying to push new boundaries in the city on sort of lowering the parking ratios. And then there is visitor parking. In fact, the minimum zoning bylaw requirement is 0.1 stalls per unit. So we'd have about 61 visitor parking stalls available as well.
And I will mention here that for Multifaith, we do not have any parking. Our tenants can rent parking from Dream if they want, but we have not built any. It was one way to offload several $1 million in expenses when our budget started kind of going up and we needed to find a way to cost cut. But as well, as a charitable housing provider, I have an ethical issue with spending millions of dollars on cars when there are 12,000 households on a wait list, and there are, you know, hundreds of families who are living a year and more in a shelter accommodation in an old motel, that I would spend public money on building car spots instead of housing for people.
I have a follow-up question. Would the visitor parking be available, especially in case of, you know, there may be seniors needing services and so on? And would it be available to some of the MHI tenants as well?
Not as a permanent parking spot. An MHI tenant would be eligible to, like, not as like a tenant can't take over a visitor parking spot, because then it wouldn't be visitor. We wouldn't be meeting our visitor requirements. So, but people can visit MHI tenants and use visitor parking.
Okay, good.
That's great.
Yep.
Because yeah, if there's gonna be seniors, they're gonna have maybe delivery service or care providers and so on, or
Yep.
family visiting to help. Okay, so there's two questions that is somewhat related. From Annette Dillon, is there a right of first refusal built into the ownership structure, such that in the event of a sale, either partner has the right of to buy out the other? And also the follow-up question is, what is Dream's exit strategy should the market units not be absorbed at the market rents?
On the legal question, I'll answer that because I'm the one who tends kind of all the legal meetings. But just to say that all those details of the right of first refusal and all that are all being worked out, of course, because we have public money in there. CMHC, City of Ottawa, they all want to be on that list as well, that they get to have, if something happened with the MHI units or something, that they would be the first ones who would be able to come in and take them over. So all of that stuff is being worked out right now between our lawyers, Dream's lawyers, CMHC's lawyers, and the City of Ottawa's lawyers.
Yeah, and on the exit strategy, we do have our plan is to hold this asset long term. We don't have a short-term exit strategy. We have commitments, long-term commitments around providing contributions post construction completion for on-site programming. We have commitments around long-term commitments around providing affordable housing. I think we feel we think that the Ottawa rental market is quite strong, is quite stable. So we have a lot of confidence that we won't have any issues absorbing the market units. And I think we've seen pretty good year-over-year growth in market rental rates, and I think part of that is just by virtue of there's still a bit of a supply imbalance. So hopefully we can help address that in a meaningful way for this project as well.
Okay. I guess there's a question from Lynn, and I might make it a little broader. Her question was how much funding is being provided by the city, but I would like to basically get an idea what's the total cost of the project and the funding sources, if you are able to disclose that.
So I mean, I don't have a problem with saying off the top of my head. I get a little worried about scooping politicians about their opportunity to have their big announceables. It makes me unfavorable, and then they're less likely to give you more money next time I go to them and ask them for money.
Okay, so this only stays in this room, okay? It doesn't go any further.
I like to ask them for money quite frequently, so I don't want to get myself in any trouble here. But so I won't give the numbers for the city, and right now the only commitments we have really are the city and CMHC. What I can say is that they have committed, and the city has been a really strong supporter, and I'm really happy with how well the city has come to the table on the project. CMHC is getting a pass, but it's like a C. But the province are a complete F-.
Yep.
Rating them, but I will let the mayor have his big announceable. I will let the feds have their announceable. I'm sure that they're going to want to announce it, and so I will, because I do want more money from them.
Yeah, right. The reason I'm concerned about city is because they only had 50 million for capital this year and for the next couple of years, which is ridiculous. And so I just was wondering, how in the world are they going to fund a wide variety of projects they've committed to, including this one, when they have so little money? That's all.
So basically taking a multi-year strategy. So looking over kind of term of council and how much they can give us in each year of that term of council, because you're right. And the city has been quite public in recent weeks and days of criticizing the province. Most people are aware that the majority of the provincial money went to at a rate of 60 times what Ottawa got for our affordable housing funding that we got completely ignored in the affordable housing budget for the province. So but that is what the city is doing. It's a tough, like the fact that the city is being so creative and really working so hard to and I'm not just saying this because I have a meeting with the mayor tomorrow. But the city is being so creative and working really hard to problem solve with this and support the project. They really prioritized it. And so that's very apparent through and through.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you.
Can I ask about, you said that some amenity space will be co-owned or co-used, and how would the operating expenses for that be split?
So right now that's all in the legal agreement side. So we have like, I don't know, like 8 to 10 legal agreements, not including the one like between just Dream and MHI. It's a very complex structure. I mean, I guess we're the first ones doing it. Next time we do it together with Dream somewhere else in the city, we'll have an easier time of it because we'll have already been to the rodeo. But we are right now working all of that out of how it's split, how the use works, and those user agreements and all of that stuff. It's a lot of fun.
But ultimately, you know, the amenity space is open to all of our tenants, and all amenity spaces are open to all of our tenants. And you know, the simple way of sort of sharing in the operating cost is basically just a pro rata share based on the square footage that each owner owns in the project. So that's the simplest way to deal with it, and that's sort of how we're trying to move that forward.
And then there's all the joint stuff that we're doing together.
Yeah, because the I believe CMHC focuses more on the actual units, rental units, and there's not as much funding for amenity spaces.
Not at all. Their focus is 100% on a per door funding model, and there is no funding for the amenity space at all.
Yeah, I wish there's other streams that help to fund it that can be pieced together, because you know, if you want to build community, and you know, if you want seniors to stay in the community, there needs to be some things to help.
Exactly. And you have to be willing to put it kind of front and center again, like the accessible units and recognizing it costs